At the time of writing this video, Pikmin 4 is releasing in a week. Since Pikmin 4 seems to be gathering a lot of hype and Nintendo recently made a surprise release of both Pikmin 1 and 2 on the Switch, I decided that I'd take advantage of the algorithm, that I'd finally get around to playing a well-liked series of games that I've never really dipped my toes in before and review the Pikmin quadrilogy. So buckle up, Pikmin, Pikwomen, and Pikenbies, cause we're going on an adventure through space. Or something. So, Pikmin has a pretty simple premise. You're a guy in a spacesuit named Olimar. A meteor hits your spaceship and throws you off course to a strange planet. Your ship crashes. Uh-oh! The parts you need to repair your spaceship are scattered all around the planet. You have 30 days before your life support fails. Look, it's an alien. Go, go, go. You're gonna fucking die. It's simple but effective. It gets the ball rolling, it sets the stakes of the gameplay up, and it introduces you to the main gimmick of the game. And I bet you can't guess what it is. I'll admit that I'm biased towards games that are heavily story-focused. If I really connect with the game's story, then I'm like 5 times more likely to develop a hyperfixation or act as an apologist for the game's weaker elements. It probably explains why some of my favorite games are JRPGs, despite the fact that so many of them have some tactless shit like this.
No, it's really too bad. It'd be no problem if I just had a swimsuit.
Ta-da! I've got you covered.
Fuck? I say this to acknowledge a fault, or at least a characteristic of myself, as someone who wants her audience to perceive her as a relatively credible, if amateur, game critic. Games that have a simple or non-existent story don't necessarily lose points from me, but they don't gain points from me that they would if I really connected with it on that level. That's not to say there's nothing to like about this game's writing, though. I like Olimar. He's a pretty cool dude. I like reading his journal entries at the end of each day. It's sweet when he talks about wanting to get home to his family. I find some of the observations and hypotheses he makes about the Pikmin interesting. I think it's funny that he doesn't know what, like, half the shit on his rocket ship does. Olimar gives a reason to give a shit about the 30-day time limit, and he is the bridge that connects the human player to this alien planet. Though I guess the planet is only really alien to the player because of the strange creatures that inhabit it. I mean, this place is pretty much just Earth with some asterisks. The reason Olimar has to get off the planet outside of missing his home is because the planet's oxygen is poisonous to him. The levels aren't really diverse like Earth is, though. We all got a pretty cool little space rock that we live on. We got forests, deserts, mountains, beaches, those other places in Minecraft, and it sucks that it's burning down and further polluting our air while my country's politicians are more focused on oppressing minorities and fostering the continued ruinous growth of businesses, but that's beside the point. My point is that Pikmin, a game that takes place on an alien planet, is mostly composed of samey grass levels. There's one level that takes place in an ugly brown cave, but other than that, it mostly takes place in grassy and foresty areas with maybe like a beach sprinkled in or something. It's not like it's a big deal or anything. I didn't really notice until my 3rd playthrough of the game, but even if this planet that's alien to Olimar is supposed to be Earth or something, it's like it takes place in a microcosm of the planet. Maybe that feeling was intentional, or maybe it was for budgetary purposes. Who knows? And this is more observation than criticism, but goddamn video game textures from the early 2000s really haven't aged well. When I was buying the bundle of Pikmin 1 and 2 on the Switch, I was going through the screenshots and I couldn't help but look at this one and just say, ew. Now that's a pretty unfair observation. I mean, this game was originally made almost 22 years ago with 480p screens in mind, but it's more of an interesting case study on how the pursuit of realistic 3D graphics often ages a little funny compared to more simple and stylized visuals from around the same time. But enough about the story and presentation. Pikmin's priorities are first and foremost about being an entertaining video game. So, is it? Well, I have a decent bit to say, but in short, there's a reason the series has a 4th entry coming out soon. 'Cause it's good. Pikmin is a real-time strategy, or RTS game, a genre I have little to no experience with outside of this game. Because I have little to no experience with the RTS genre, I gotta say my first playthrough had a bit of a learning curve. I admit it, I save-scummed a little bit. I shouted my fair share of vulgarities and an occasional, "Why the fuck are you doing that?" Ow. Ow, I just hurt my sock. And sometimes while recording footage in my first playthrough, I'd have to quit for half an hour or so just to cool the hell off. But the nice thing about the RTS genre, or this specific RTS game at least, is that so much of the difficulty is less about the game directly kicking your ass, and more about the need to properly strategize your time. Wow, who would have guessed? So if you go in, know how to use your Pikmin properly, and you aren't fucking pissed off, then the difficulty gets knocked down a few pegs. Regardless of your mood though, you still do need to know how to use your Pikmin properly. After all, it's not like I went into the game pissed. I got pissed off from being too stupid to play the fucking game. To that, I'll just say that I lifted a lot of difficulty off my shoulders during my first playthrough when I looked up a speedrun of the game and just skipped around studying how the runner was playing the game. Some of the glitches used for the run are beyond my comprehension, and generally I don't think inexperienced players should be intentionally using glitches just to be able to progress through a game anyway, but Pikmin speedruns are much less about glitches than, say, a platforming game. The runners have just gotten so good at the game that they're making a fucking joke of the time management challenge the developers intended while balancing the game. Watching the strategies used in that tool-assisted speedrun I looked at was eye-opening. After booting up the game again, I went from struggling to get anything done to bum rushing enemies with ease and doing shit like getting 3 spaceship parts in one day. And suddenly the game clicked for me. So if this review causes you to play Pikmin and you end up like me where the game keeps pissing you off and you're running behind schedule to beat it before the day limit is up, I'm not saying you should look up a speedrun and just observe how they play, but I'm not stopping you. Beyond the initial anger and frustration of learning how to play a game in a genre I've never played before, there was only one thing that felt particularly poorly designed in all 3 of my playthroughs. So there's these little patches of grass or rocks dispersed through all the levels in the game, and the Pikmin will stop when they touch them so they can try to get nectar from them, because the nectar makes the top of their head bloom into a flower. Weird, but okay. I found this feature annoying in general at first, but eventually you learn to accept it. It only makes sense that Pikmin would prioritize finding the nether that... The nether? Fucking Minecraft. It only makes sense that Pikmin would prioritize finding the nectar that makes them bloom above all else because that's how they mature. They also get quite a big buff when they bloom into flower Pikmin, so generally it's a good idea to just let them do their thing in these situations unless it's an emergency. Where it annoyed me throughout all 3 of my playthroughs, however, was that flower Pikmin also stop when you touch the grass or rocks, even though there's no benefit for it or the gameplay. So occasionally you're traveling with a group that's nearly entirely comprised of flower Pikmin, time's ticking, you gotta get shit done, then a few of them will get snagged on some fucking grass, and it's just like,
Dude! Stop! Just stop! Just cut it out! Stop that! You put that away! You put that back in your pants!
This is a really minor complaint though, and if you're working with the Pikmin and not against them, then it really shouldn't be a big deal. I have some more things I could nitpick about Pikmin, but I'm not going to waste your time or mine listing it off, because most of it comes down to petty complaints or shit that any reasonable person would just say gets good to. So the final verdict is yeah, Pikmin's pretty good. Once it clicked with me, it really clicked, and I did my last 2 playthroughs in a few sittings dispersed through one day. If I didn't know I had to get to work on actually writing the review, I probably would have done more too. I don't find it to be groundbreaking, and it's not like my next big hyperfixation or something like pretty much every other review I've made on this channel, but I definitely recommend it. So go play it. Now. Or else.